Did former Congresswoman Stacey Abrams run a $2 billion grift on the United States government? That is something I would like to know. And that is the question we are answering today. This is a somewhat old story, but it got new legs when, on the All In podcast last Friday, David Sachs and Chamath Palihapitya re-upped this. They said Stacey Abrams got $1.9 billion in 30 days from the U.S. government, that it was a hopelessly corrupt situation.
Stacey Abrams got $2 billion after 30 days. And I just asked the question, what is broken inside of the government that's possible? That us.
It's hopelessly corrupt. That's exactly right.
A
it's
company
hopelessly
of 50.
corrupt.
And I thought to myself, I need to know if this is true. Now, as I dug into the story, it really has everything. You have Donald Trump going off script at his own State of the Union address. You have an undercover conservative watchdog group secretly recording a former EPA staffer under Biden. You have Trump appointees running with the work of those undercover conservative watchdog groups to totally blow something out of proportion. But also, there are reasons we should maybe be concerned. And then, of course, Democrats seem to have no idea what's even going on. So this is what we are talking about today. What actually happened with this $2 billion Stacey Abrams scandal? Is it real? Is it not? I'm Carly Riley. This is the Carly P. Riley Show. I am trying to understand this moment in American politics, this moment in American political history, break down and dissect the narratives that I hear coming from both sides, and just wrap my head around what is going on. So if that sounds interesting to you, would love to have you subscribe to the channel or share this video if you get some value out of it. So the organization at the heart of all of this is called Power Forward Communities. It was set up in 2023, and yes, it was given a $2 billion grant from the EPA during the Biden administration. You had 5 groups with decades of experience in either housing policy or environmentalism. You had Enterprise Community Partners, Habitat for Humanity, Rewiring America, United Way Worldwide, Local Initiative Support Corporation, whatever. I've only heard of Habitat for Humanity. Anyway, you had these 5 orgs that all came together to form this new organization, yes, with the explicit purpose of applying for and hopefully getting a grant from the Biden EPA to do work around refurbishing old hotels, old housing projects, senior homes, and upgrading them to run on clean energy so that is both more cost effective for the residents and also better for the environment. Okay, so Power Forward Communities starts in August 2023, gets $1.9 billion, 5 coalition organizations. Where does Stacey Abrams fall in all of this? And we know that Stacey Abrams is involved because the president told us such at his State of the Union address.
$1.9 billion to recently created Decarbonization of Homes Committee, headed up, and we know she's involved. Just at the last moment, the money was passed over by a woman named Stacey Abrams. Have you ever heard of her?
This is such a classic Trump line. You know he ad-libbed this. Headed up, and we know she's involved. Just at the last moment, the money was passed over by a woman named Stacey Abrams. There's no way that was what was on his teleprompter, right? Like, that's not what was actually written on the teleprompter. She both is heading up this organization, and we know she's involved. So yeah, Stacey Abrams is not heading up Power Forward Communities at all. In fact, she's not on the board. She's not really involved in Power Forward Communities at all. Stacey Abrams, in March of 2023, joined Rewiring America as special counsel. Now, I have no idea what that means. I tried to figure it out. I thought she was maybe their lawyer, but they already have a general counsel. So I think she was just essentially an advisor and involved in some capacity with this organization, Rewiring America, one of the 5 groups that formed this coalition to create Power Forward Communities. Rewiring America is a nonprofit that focuses on transitioning from fossil fuel to electricity for things. So like, apparently part of the work she did was getting a small town in Georgia electric water heaters to replace their fossil fuel heated water heaters, which cut their overall water bills and also was better for the environment. So like, that's the kind of work. It's very like bureaucracy, boring, but good if it is what they describe kind of work. And she did tweet out at one point, thrilled to be a part of Rewiring America and the Powered Forward Communities Coalition, prioritizing housing, equity, and resilience. But that, as far as I can tell, is like the most involved she has been in all of this. Now look, could Stacey Abrams behind the scenes have been greasing the palms of certain people to try and make this happen so that $1.9 billion could go to this nonprofit? Yeah, I mean, I guess we just don't have evidence of that. So what do we have evidence of? Well, this is where we get to the conservative watchdog group who secretly records a former Biden EPA official. Because the probably most important allegation here is the one that you've heard come up a couple of times. You have Chamath Palihapitya saying she got $1.9 billion in 30 days. You have Donald Trump saying, just at the last minute, it was passed over. Whatever the hell he says. I have a terrible Trump impersonation, clearly. And this brings us to October of 2024. So we are now 1 month before the 2024 election. And what happens? Well, the Biden EPA signs a bunch of contracts with a series of nonprofits, including Power Forward communities, that contractually obligates them to pay out this money that they have won via these grants. So the $1.9 billion, $2 billion, whatever it is, that has been awarded to Power Forward communities, that gets contractually obligated in October of 2024, 1 month before the election. Now, it is worth noting that the $2 billion is to be paid out over 7 years. So they'll get installments of money. But the contractual obligation comes in October of 2024, 1 month before Trump wins the election. And in December of 2024, Project Veritas, this conservative watchdog group that secretly records liberals saying embarrassing, unflattering, bad things and then puts them online, releases a video of an EPA employee. I was going to say EPA official, but this kid looks young and I don't think he was officiating much. An EPA employee saying things about why this happened the way it happened.
No, I think we gave them the money because it was harder. If it was a government-run program, they could take the money away. If Trump won, and because it was a expense policy against Trump winning. So like these are basically like nonprofit institutions that will cover the entire country. They could have been a government agency, but because they aren't, well, they're safer from Republicans sitting in the event. It truly feels like we're on the Titanic and we're throwing like gold bars off the
Yikes. Not the best thing to say on camera, accidentally. So what happens here? Okay, well, you have conservatives now armed with a couple of key facts that allow them to create a pretty compelling narrative. This idea that you have nonprofits, one of which has some sort of loose affiliation with Stacey Abrams, which is a name that people know and therefore it can get more attention. You have money going out the door in October of 2024, right before Trump wins the election. And then you have an EPA official saying we were throwing gold bars off the Titanic and we set it up this way so that Trump couldn't take any of this money back. All right, none of that reeks of like the kind of government you necessarily want. It also, however, is not indicative of fraud. And this is the big leap that all of these folks seem to make. Chamath seems to imply it, David Sachs seems to imply it, Donald Trump seems to imply it. Everyone on the conservative right who talks about this talks about it like it is proof of fraud. You had the new head of the EPA say this.
An extremely disturbing video circulated 2 months ago featuring a Biden EPA political appointee talking about how they were tossing gold bars off the Titanic, rushing to get billions of your tax dollars out the door before Inauguration Day. The gold bars were tax dollars, and tossing them off the Titanic meant the Biden administration knew they were wasting it.
That's the leap. He's saying it's an extremely disturbing video of a former employee describing throwing gold bars off the Titanic. Okay, I get it. The leap he makes is saying it meant that the Biden administration knew they were wasting it. No, it doesn't. They could just as well have set it up this way because they genuinely believed that the clean energy and housing programs they were doing were good for Americans and good for America. This leap that all these conservatives make to corruption and fraud is where we don't really have the evidence to back it up, at least that I was able to find. Now, I do want to say one thing to credit the conservatives. It does turn out that many billions of dollars were going to nonprofit organizations and have been for years. And that those nonprofit organizations are generally staffed by Democrats, whether former Democratic staff people, operatives, Democratic donors. And as this former EPA employee admits, the dynamic between government and NGO means that you have work being done outside of the government, but essentially as a proxy for work that government might otherwise do. And it does create almost a parallel government system outside the official purview of government, but still very much within the demands of government. And it is run by liberals. So if you're a conservative, I get you feeling critical of that system. What I don't hear a lot of, though, and this is what frustrates me, is specifically proving that the money inappropriately went to an individual as opposed to the work it said it was going to. So that's the big thing with this whole Power Forward communities and Stacey Abrams and is like there are extensive papers both by the EPA and by Power Forward communities laying out what Power Forward's community is going to do, what the metrics they have to succeed are. The EPA has a whole long list of what the requirements were to get this grant money. They had expert panel reviews and they had interviews. Like, they had this, it was a long process. I won't read you all of it because it'll frankly bore you. Now, if that process was a sham and the fix was in for certain groups to begin with, if Power Forward communities, what they claim they're going to do, they're not actually going to do, and a lot of this is going to go and millions is going to be spent, 70% of the money is actually going to be spent paying, the Democratic consultants who are running the thing, then that is absolutely a story. That is absolutely fraud. It is worth pointing out, and conservatives should be shouting it from the rooftops. The problem is they don't show that. They suggest that the existence of this is grift, and that is just not fair. And then, of course, on top of that, you have just a tremendous amount of misinformation about the actual facts itself. Chamath Palihapitya saying that Stacey Abrams' nonprofit got $2 billion in 30 days, and Donald Trump saying, at the last moment it was passed over. What are they talking about? This was a program that was set up in late 2021. The application process opened in July of 2023, and in October of 2024, contracts were signed with them. I mean, this whole thing was over a year long. As is the case with so much of this stuff, it is loose on facts, high on narrative. And that, unfortunately, is how our politics works at this point. Half of what you hear, at least, probably not true. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, I would love if you would consider sharing it with somebody else who you think might enjoy it, or subscribing to the channel.